Hello and welcome to the Merc Astropod, where we talk about astrology. My name is Bren. I use they, them pronouns. I am a Pisces sun, an Aries moon, Aries rising, and an Aquarius Mercury. And this is my fellow co-host.
Hi, my name is Rose. I'm a professional astrologer, occultist, and body piercer. I have a sun in Mercury in Virgo, a moon in Sagittarius, and a rising in Moon in Sagittarius, rising in Aquarius. There we go.
Yes.
And then this is our special guest this week. We have my dear friend Lotta, who is joining from out of town. Would you like to share your big three and your Mercury sign?
Yeah, I'm Lotta, she, her, and I'm an Aquarius sun, a Scorpio rising, Scorpio moon, and Capricorn Mercury.
Beautiful. Amazing. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your astrology knowledge and like how you identify with astrology?
It's my favorite thing in the world.
Yes. Relatable.
I've never had a passion before I found astrology, and now I have many, all based in astrology. But Rose was my astrologer for a while, and a lot of what I know is what they taught me or recommended to me or books they gave me or pointed me to.
Always Demetra George. If you're a technical person and you want to get down to the depth and complexity of shit while still trying to understand it on like a tangible level in today's society, Demetra George always.
Yeah. Yep, I got the thick books.
Hell yeah.
Love them.
Love that. Well, today's topic is going to be planetary returns, or synodic cycles, as Rosalie likes to call them. But before we get into that, we just want to give you a little update on the last podcast. We were talking about retrogrades, and now we are officially out of Mercury and Venus retrograde. Well, we're in the post-retrograde shadow still, but just
until
update
April 26th.
For which one?
For Mercury,
and then sometime early
Venus
May.
in early May. Yeah.
And then what about Mars?
Mars is May 2nd. Venus is May 16th.
Perfect. Yeah. So,
but in the middle of that, Pluto stations are triggered on May 4th. May the 4th.
Be with you. Yeah. So if you did listen and catch in on us last time, I was in a car accident for the Mercury retrograde, which was very sad. I still don't have a car. I'm hoping that by the time,
because it's station retrograde quite literally on your ascendant.
Literally on my ascendant, and the day that I got in the accident was the day that it stationed retrograde. So I'm hoping that I'll have a car by the time it goes into the after the post-retrograde shadow. So fingers crossed. Yeah, send me good vibes to get a nice, beautiful new car. So it's been just a really long process, like getting the money and like working with the insurance companies and like, it's been a whole thing. So.
Oh my God, in the Tat world realm, updating Venus retrograde stories, people coming in are getting cover-ups of names during this time. Like, quite literally, like, it's very common that those are our walk-ins that we get in. Oh, I just want to cover up this, like, name. It's, like, my old girl, you know, or whatnot, have you. And it's just, like, kind of funny seeing, like, the abundance of that. Because that is, like, I guess, stereotype of things that people get done. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, to go from hearing people like rant and vent about like their breakups and like how they're like putting themselves first and finding things for themselves to now like getting names covered up. It's like making that next step forward, that like permanent removal of that person from your life, the like kind of turning a new leaf kind of aspect. It's been interesting to witness and to watch. So
yeah.
Would you recommend getting tattoos during a Venus retrograde? Or a Mars retrograde?
No, I personally wouldn't.
I feel like I wouldn't.
I know. Well, you get tattoos every day of the year. But.
Yeah, so it doesn't count.
Yeah, but yeah, just generally any beauty, especially permanent beauty activities, you might not want to do during a Venus retrograde, especially if you are Venusian, but it also isn't going to be like a life or death sentence. Like I got my tattoo from Rosalie for my Saturn return, I believe. Yeah, it was still Venus retrograde. So, you know, sometimes you just do what you got to do for whatever reason. So
Yeah.
Just trust your intuition on that one.
But yeah, at the Mercury Astro, or the Denver Astrology Group meetup, sorry, we are the Mercury Astro Pod.
Yeah.
At the Denver Astrology Group, we talked about planetary returns and those planetary cycles, and Venus's relationship with the sun is a huge phase relationship importance thing. And we talked pretty heavily about that. We'll probably zoom through.
We'll start with what it is,
and
what we talked about yesterday. And luckily, all three of us were present at the meetup yesterday, so we're excited to get your input as well, Lotta, for what you picked up on as well. But just generally, what is a planetary return, also known as a synodic cycle? It's when a planet returns to the same point it was during like a specific time. So say your birth chart, for example, you will have your sun at a certain degree every at the same point, like for all time, I guess. But when it does its cycle through the year, it will return back to that same point. So if you have like a sun 2 degrees Taurus, for example, it will go through all the other zodiac signs throughout the year, and then it will return back to that 2 degrees Taurus the next year, and that would be a planetary return.
Well, it's not technically a year, because what is it, 364 days?
Correct. We'll get into that.
Just
for the sake of understanding what
I get what you mean.
But yes, thank you for that clarification for sure. So this happens with every planetary body, and some are shorter than others. Like the moon, for example, is just like roughly a month long, whereas the sun would be a year, whereas other planets are different lengths too. But we can track each of these planetary returns within our own charts or within charts of like events or things like that to just see what cycles have completed within that time frame.
And usually, depending on the length, like obviously the lessons that you go through are a little harder to deal with. Like lunar things are probably a little bit easier to deal with, like changing emotional states, because it does happen on like a monthly basis, whether you're aware of it or not. But the moon loves to work on a subconscious level, so you're probably working through your lunar things without even realizing them. Whereas Saturn, though, on the other hand, is a little bit more intense,
Yeah.
It's a little bit more, hey, this took 30 years practically to get to this point, so we're really gonna hammer in the lessons that you need to learn during that time.
For sure.
Which is also a great talking point that we'll get to, because Bren just finished up their Saturn return, and Lana and I are both about to enter our Saturn return here, so it's like a little trade-off here of sorts.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about Saturn today and Saturn returns, and it's a really profound time. It is like Saturn is the planet of, adulthood and authority and things like that, and what I've learned in my Saturn return is really coming to terms with like the authorities that I've seen externally or like been following subconsciously even. My Saturn's in the 12th house, and then integrating that within myself and being like, well, what were those just ideas of what I had about authority and adulthood and structure and things like that were coming from outside the house versus what was coming from within the house.
But do you feel like more of an adult now? Do you feel like you trust your own decision making and like
Actually, yeah,
more?
I definitely do. I definitely do. I will say I still feel like a kid in a lot of ways. That could just be my Aries too. But yeah, no, it's definitely a coming of age of like, if you accept Saturn's lessons, then you will feel that way. I do think like if you really take that on, but if you don't, you probably will feel more like you're at the mercy of life,
Yeah.
But, Saturn is also the planet of fate and things like that. So, but mine's in a different sign than yours, and it's in a different house than yours, so you might experience it a little differently. But I personally love Saturn, and I do think that he or she or they, Saturn will reward you if you do the work.
Saturn's feminine. It just makes so much sense, all right? Why do we have both the malefics be fucking masculine? That's so stupid. The benefics balance out perfectly. Mercury's just doing its hermaphroditic thing, and then we got the luminaries balancing out. Why?
Well, Saturn is growth. That's so feminine.
I feel like Saturn is such like the wise old woman who like will give you the harsh reality truth, but tell you in a way that is nurturing at the same time to be like, hey, this is just a lesson that you have to.
That Saturn nurturing at all.
It's say that in 2 years.
It's out of love.
No,
it's
I will
out
not
of love.
say that.
I will say that.
It is out of love.
It's not. I would not say.
It's out of necessity. And I feel like I see nurturement and necessity.
You are Saturnian too,
so
nurturing for you might yeah, I see where you're
Me
coming
that
from.
necessity.
But also it depends on where Saturn is, like what sign as well, like
of course.
how it's going to be. Like mine's in a feminine side, yours or I mean, why are we even talking about feminine masculine
Right,
really at
right.
this
No,
point?
really.
But you know,
It's
yin,
passive and active,
yes,
yeah.
passive sign versus an active sign, it might display different. Also, if you have a night chart versus a day chart, you know,
No,
there's
100%.
a lot of things. But we digress. We'll get into that in a little bit if we want to talk more about the Saturn returns. But would you like to tell people about like the
Yes.
length of each planet?
Yeah, totally. So the moon takes about 29.5 days to transit completely around the zodiac, which is just shy of our Gregorian calendar system, 30 to 31 day months. So the moon travels a little bit quicker than our calendar system. I mean, lunar calendars do exist, and other cultures definitely do go by lunar calendars, and it makes much more sense and XYZ, but in America, we do not. So, or in most Western culture. But anyway, point is, moon takes about a month to transit through, and when we look at like lunar returns and things like that, they happen so frequently, they're a little bit easier as a predictive tool to like ease into, but we'll get to that because our next fastest planet is Mercury, which takes a little less than 100 days to go completely around the zodiac, clocking in at 87.97 days. And then Venus is really speedy, but also before Earth in our solar system. They're both internal. It's the Sun, Mercury, then Venus, then Earth. So because they're both before the Earth in our solar system, they obviously move quicker than the Earth does. So Venus is clocking in at 227.7 days, which is just shy of a year, about 3/4 of a year-ish. And then the Sun is 365.26 days. So not technically a complete year. That's why we have like leap years and why we have our calendar system the way that it works, is because the way that we tell time doesn't work with the way that astronomy works. And we're like consciously aware of that, but do nothing to change that. It's fine. We've tried different calendar systems in different cultures for different decades, and it just never like works out in one way or the other. But then we got Mars, the next visible planet in our solar system that moves a little bit faster, clocking in at 686.98 days, which is about, what, two and a half years?
Yeah, a little over 2.
It's like 2 1/4, maybe. And it's pretty, like, consistent with return dates. It's just not always exact. And then Jupiter takes about 12 years, so we're switching from like 2.5 now to a big chunk, and that's because there is a chunk of our visible solar system between Mars and Jupiter that the asteroids occupy, and that takes up 1/3 of our visible solar system, spanning over 100 million miles. So Jupiter takes 11.86 years to transit completely around the zodiac. Jupiter returns are something that we'll definitely get into because we kind of talked about that a little bit heavier. And then Saturn returns, as we were discussing, take 29.46 years to go completely around the zodiac. So that's why I think we really hammered in on that in our group too, because a lot of the age group of the Denver Astrology group is around 29.46. Not to say, I mean, we got somebody going through their second Saturn return too that you made a great connection with, that I was really excited to like hear from, because it's always nice to hear Saturn return stories from somebody who's gone through the exact same Saturn return you're about to, you know?
Yeah.
Well, not the exact same, but in the same sign, in the same energy, to be like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Well, and how they handled it then and how they're seeing it approach now with more wisdom and life experience.
Yeah,
Exactly.
how do you see the second Saturn return going?
It depends on how you did on the first one. In
Yeah,
my opinion.
it depends on the growth and the work that you did into it. It's usually easier regardless because it's still shit that you've dealt with before. Because it's same archetypally kind of like connection with things, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it's always inherently easier to deal with internally or externally due to whatever growth lessons you'll need to deal with. And also, however, Saturn is being aspected in the chart, obviously, will have a huge
whether you have a
play
day or
in
night
that.
chart. Well, and also Saturn is the planet of time, so time just in general will be more favorable usually. I mean, again, depending on other factors, but
Yeah, and usually your Saturn return starts, like, I'm not even 28 yet, and but it takes 29.5 for 6 years. It's just because Saturn is entering the sign of Aries. It's not at the exact degree that will return to that exact moment yet. I'm in the second decan of Aries, so it'll take a little bit of time to like get all the way over there, but it's still the influence, the energy, the like taste that we'll get, because it'll dip back in. You're not going to be fully done.
Oh no, I feel like I've been going through my Saturn return since Saturn entered Pisces.
Oh,
But you
1,000%.
also have that early sun.
That's true. I also had early Pisces placements. But you will feel the energy. Again, Saturn, the planet of time, it takes time to really understand and integrate these lessons and even see what's going on. Well, again, mine's in the 12th house, so that was the case for me specifically. But, I think time is the key word here.
And you know what's the most ancient thing? The sky, which leads us to our next planet, Uranus, or Uranus. At 84.01 years, which doesn't always happen, or doesn't always have to happen that late in life. Sometimes, depending on the retrograde patterns of these outer planets of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, you might experience a point where the outer planet will retrograde shortly after your birth, and you will experience an outer planet return in your early adolescence or early childhood. Usually with outer planet things, it is some sort of great disruption in your childhood or in your sense of understanding your livelihood and the world around you, whether in a chaotic necessary way with Uranus, in a disillusionment way with Neptune, or in a fated way with Pluto.
For sure.
And Neptune and Pluto cycles are unlivable in anybody's single human lifetime, and with current modern science, I hope we never live to be 164.79 years, which is Neptune's orbit length. And then Pluto is roughly 247.94 years that it takes to go completely around the zodiac. And that shifts and changes is because Pluto is sporadic and weird, and its orbit isn't necessarily on line with anything. Or in line with anything.
Yeah.
So, moving onwards.
Yeah. We can start with just kind of touching on each planet. We kind of already did a little bit, but we can also talk a little bit about how you can use each of these planetary returns to your benefit, and Lotta too, if you want to pipe in on anything that you really felt called to speak about from yesterday's meetup as well, if any of that is calling to you. Is anything coming up to you now before we get into it?
Not yet.
Okay.
We'll let you know.
Yeah, let us know. We'll start with the moon, Rosalie was saying earlier. This is that subconscious planet, and also our emotional planet. It happens once a month roughly, give or take some time, and so this is a time every time the lunar return happens and hits that same degree as in your birth chart, that's a good time for reflection. See all those lunar topics that you've been going through the last month and how you might want to integrate that into the next month, or if it's making any specific aspects during your new lunar return as opposed to your original lunar return, or lunar placement I should say, and just seeing what might be in store for you this next month ahead for this next cycle.
Well, it's probably more applicable for people like us who have the moon in the first house,
right?
Or night charts.
Or night charts, or if you're
Lunar
in a
people,
lunar
Cancer people,
or a lunar year.
Oh yeah, Cancer perfected year.
Yeah.
Yeah, regardless of where the moon is in your chart. I'm trying to think of what happened during my last 6th house perfected year, but I'm about to go into that again, so it's kind of almost 12 years.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a hot second.
Well, I was in my Cancerian, my Cancer 4th year perfection 2 years ago, and that was a very intense time for sure. Eclipses were also very powerful during that time as well, because that's a very lunar event. But these are all tools that you can use to kind of further understand, your lunar return. So maybe during a Cancerian perfected year, you might want to follow your lunar returns more.
Did you find that things were going in cycles? Monthly cycles?
I mean, as a very lunar person, it always kind of is.
Yeah,
but
you are a very lunar person. Yeah, that's valid.
But, it's hard to say, too. It's hard to say sometimes.
I feel like living with the moon the ways in which you do, though, has definitely helped you mitigate a lot of lunar problems that you would probably have normally experienced with, because I don't see you as a very, Aries moon. Sometimes
really?
you can, be flirty with anybody who you meet. You're like, oh my god, I have a crush on you, and a crush on you, and a crush on you. That's fine.
It's also my Aries Venus, but
Exactly.
literally.
But I feel like your emotional control is very what's the word I'm looking for? Commemorative? No. Complementary to your personality.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I think it was a very struggling thing when I experienced, like, my emotions were a lot more severe growing up, and that was something that I learned to tame a little bit more. And just knowing that I need a lot of alone time, because also Mars is in my 12th house too.
Yeah.
And
I get that, because I've got my first house moon. It's Scorpio, and Mars in the 12th.
Well, your moon's in fall too, so it's an extra not fun territory.
I love my moon. What are you talking
Well,
about?
So
you
is my
love
moon.
your moon.
Yeah.
my
Not
moon's
technically.
Yeah.
In
yeah.
Aries.
Yeah.
It's opposing Libra. Wait.
Oh wait, no.
The moon
is
I'm
Cancer,
You're
yeah.
right. My bad. It's squaring it, but yeah, no. Yeah. Anyway.
We have a thing on Essential Dignity next month, Bren.
Yeah, we haven't covered it yet. I
Okay.
need to do my studying, obviously. No, I was thinking about my Venus. My bad.
No, your Venus is definitely in detriment, but
Yeah.
your moon is in fall. Your moon's uncomfy for sure. I don't think the moon particularly likes being in a masculine energy sign regardless.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like totally favorable, but
It's a little fiery.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the moon has no trigon. It's only earth and water that it ever has any affinity to, so.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's the moon. That's the moon. So.
Yeah, and Lunar Returns are really about taking those moments to, like, have time for yourself and to have, like, regardless of where your moon is and what you need for yourself, to, like, find familiarity and comfortability, you know?
I find that reflecting and, like, looking back, whenever I'm having my lunar return, I just start looking, like, years before to just check out what happened and, like, how I felt, and I go into these deep dives.
That's
It
your
makes
4th
me-
house concentration too.
I think it's that moon being above my ascendant too.
Yeah.
And I'm just find a lot of comfort for moving forward by looking back.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah.
Well, because you want to look to the deeper sides of things, because it's in Scorpio. You're like, let me get to the bottom of it, which includes research and looking back to past behavioral patterns and things that have happened, not only to you, but historically, probably in your family, too.
Yeah. So for
Because you're healing a lot of generational trauma, my
yeah,
guy.
you are.
Thanks, I'm trying.
looking at that lunar return, seeing the sign that it's in, seeing what that sign might need. So again, that watery moon might want to like have more like emotional, like watery kind
Maybe
of vibe.
a little cry.
Right. And also what house it's in. You know, for the first house, you want to focus on you, but maybe, you know, if it's in the 7th house, you want to see where you're emotionally at with the people in your life, your one-on-one connections, you know. So those are ways that you can use the lunar return for your benefit.
And then I spoke to this on at the meetup. I don't personally really look to my lunar return too frequently. Like sometimes I'd be like, oh, the moon's in Sagittarius, cool, and I like won't even like realize that it's happening. I find when the moon is on my ascendant in the last decan of Aquarius, that's when I love like those placements. Like when the moon hits certain things in my chart, I like it, but I don't really pay too much attention to my lunar returns the more and more I think about it. But I do pay attention to my lunar phase returns because I have a first quarter moon. So my moon and sun are square each other, but my moon is later in zodiacal order. So it's later into degree, essentially, than my sun.
So that's a lunar phase return rather than a lunar sign return.
Yeah, it's not when it's back at whatever it is,
Whatever
17
degree.
degrees of Sagittarius. It's when it's a first quarter moon is when I'm crying in the shower.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Oh, well, it's good to get a good cry out. You know, it's good
Especially
to,
in
like,
the shower.
release that. Oh, yeah, that shit's so cathartic. Screaming to, like, music in the background, too.
Well, and something that was really cool that we talked about yesterday too was the also like the third quarter might also like the phases of the moon tell a whole story. Is that yours?
Yeah.
Third quarter moon. So that's
2
about
degrees
like
away.
yeah, the releasing versus the first quarter, which is the building, right? And the tension points, they're both tension points, but one is with the growing of the moon and one is with the releasing and this diminishing of the moon, and how those phasal returns can also play a role.
Yeah, and I had made the connection of how, like, third quarter moon times is definitely times where I'm like, did I I really need to like be upset about that? No, that was fucking stupid. Like, you know, and then I like kind of have like a reality check, and it's just this constant back and forth on the first and third quarter. Second quarter is just a full moon.
But I also find that it's really useful to take, if you need to make like a big decision, you wait a full moon cycle and like check in at those each of those 4 points and see how you feel. And by the time it comes back around, then you're kind of ready and informed to make the decision.
That's smart. I should do that.
I do that a lot.
Well, very lunar people too. That would be,
I'm bad at making decisions like right away. But if
I'm a date chart. I don't, leave me alone. Yeah. But that's smart. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, try it. It's good.
Yeah.
What is, as to lunar in the first house individuals, I guess what would be your best advice for dealing with the moon and working with the moon?
To literally work with it. Like, literally pay attention.
Feel,
journal, pay attention. I really focus mostly on new moons and full moons because that's just the easiest. There's 2 points in a month that you can look, okay, what am I starting? That's the new moon. What do we want to build? Full moon, what do we need to release? Period.
When I first started really getting into astrology, I was on that so much. And I feel like it really helped me track my life and also not get so emotionally involved in things, because you're really seeing when things start and when they end. And when you see that they really start and end within like 2 weeks or a month or 2 months, then next time something comes up that's really emotional for you, you're kind of like...
You're like, I don't need to put this much energy into
exactly.
it. Yeah.
When I'm journaling about it a month later, it's going to be gone.
Yeah. Yeah, the fluidity of the moon, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I would love for us to move on to the sun. The sun is an amazing planetary return because it usually happens around your birthday. That's your birthday planetary return, the most common one that we get to experience usually.
I feel like it's like your true birthday. It's like the time, because it's usually like a day before or after, or sometimes just like a certain point. Sometimes it does land on your actual birthday, your solar return. But I find like that's the point in time where like you want to be seen, you want to be celebrated, you want to, not all the time.
If you have a 12th house sun, I would argue.
You want to see yourself, you want to see your subconscious. That's still wanting to be seen by yourself is still visible.
Yeah. Be seen in a certain way, for sure. Yeah. Or it's just an illumination of the truth of who you are, whether you want to see it or not.
Trust me, I have an 8th house sun. People see me and I just shake.
Yeah.
Like one of those chihuahuas.
Yeah, I could see that from you. And I was like, Rosalie, we need to celebrate your birthday this year. And you were just like, absolutely not. But we're going to. But in a way that feels good for you.
Let me be by myself for my birthday.
Well, that's why I actually really like the solar return, because like during my actual solar return, I want to be alone. But then the day of my actual birthday, I'm more willing to be like, because that's like the day, I think it's usually the day after now in this stage of my life.
We're horrible examples for this as 12th house
and 8th house place. Yeah. Where's your sun?
4th.
Okay,
so
we're all...
But
no, very private.
My best friend has the same solar return as me, and so we usually do it together, which takes the pressure off. So it's not just me. And also for the past 2 years, we literally sat inside and ordered food and just watched TV.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And it was amazing.
That makes perfect sense for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are perfect examples of how you can look at your particular sun. What house is it in? What sign is it in, too? What is going to nourish you for that solar return?
Are there any major planetary aspects to that sun?
Exactly. So you'll want to pull up, like, the best way, in my opinion, to use your solar return, pull up the actual chart of your solar return, see what aspects the sun is making, also what house the sun is in for that year of your life. And that's how you can plan the year ahead, like what themes are going to be coming up for you. The sun is going to be obviously the most important planet in a solar return because that's the focus. And it'll always be in the same sign as your birth sun, obviously, but it could be in a different house.
Yeah, the way that I read like predictive solar return charts is it's the vibe of the year. I'm not looking for, this is the day that you're going to get into a car accident, Bren. I'm looking for, what are you going to be dealing with on, like, how are things aspecting the sun? And I kind of shared how I will, like, draw on charts, and doing solar return charts, it's super fun. I'll circle the sun, and then you draw a 180-degree angle, and then a 120-degree angle on either side, and then a 90-degree angle on either side, and then a 60-degree angle on either side, and you're like, okay, what's close to anything that I just drew a line to?
But it's also which themes are coming up from your natal chart that are going to be specifically highlighted that year.
Oh, 100% too. Yeah,
And, like,
you
if you have
overlay
any-
that onto the natal chart 1,000%. But that's
also if you
a
have
more
any
advanced technique.
Aspects that you have in your natal chart that also show up in your solar return.
That's
I
true.
feel like that really comes up.
Yeah, like if you, for example, had like, I don't know, Sun square Mars in your natal chart, and then you had Sun square Mars, but it was
In your solar return.
the opposite square, you know? So say Mars was inferior in the first square in your natal chart, and then say you caught a superior square in your solar return chart. Maybe it's a lot about like releasing the other side of that tension. Like seeing the battle from quite literally fighting it on the other side. Almost in a sense. Being contentious on another point. I don't want to make squares seem as bad, because it's more like opportunity and options. And like tension through choice, and dealing with those things rather than like outwards like fighting up against each other, but that release of understanding that from the other side. So there's like another layer we could add on to that as well. But
Yeah.
hell yeah.
Yeah. So that's the solar return. Yeah. Any other thoughts about the solar return?
No, I think that was a
No,
great
I-
point to
I
like
love
look
that-
for similar transits.
Yeah. Well, I also love that the astrology apps just do it for you.
Yeah.
Oh,
You don't
yeah,
have to do any
for
of that.
sure.
You just plug it in.
Yeah. Well, and if you have like a honeycomb planner, they offer that as well.
Yeah.
That's usually the one that I use.
I like getting the solar return before and after, because I always renew in September. I make my honeycomb collectives for like my birth month, which is actually really nice, because they didn't used to offer you can select it for like whenever. It was like 2 or 3 months as to like right now you could like get around. So if you like missed ordering around your birthday, and I'm not thinking about ordering a new almanac around that time because I never write in them, I just refer to them a lot, which you probably hate and loathe, but
You use your almanac how you want to use it. I'll use mine how, maybe differently.
yeah, I've omitted getting note pages for quite some time now because of that, but I will 100% like, I don't know, just get it for, I like looking at both solar return charts so that I can like kind of see what I'm leaving behind and what I no longer have to like deal with, but then also the similarities of like what's going to carry over onto the next year. Like what am I still going to kind of be dealing with?
Yeah.
Usually obviously outer planet stuff, for sure, but
Yeah. Well, and another thing that we talked about yesterday about the solar return chart is what location do you choose? So some people will say like you can use your location of where you were born originally. Some people will say to use the location of where you're going to actually be on your birthday, and some people will say to choose the location that you're going to spend most of the year for your that specific solar return.
Well, that's like a question I've asked you many times, like every year. Anytime I meet an astrologer, that's a question I ask them, because I'm never where I was born and I'm really far away.
Personally, I would not do that. I would not use the place where you were born.
I'd
I would
say where you
use
currently are.
Right.
Yeah, where
I
you
feel like
are
it's
when
more
it happens.
applicable.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe looking at both and like referencing them, sure, but I definitely feel like where you are currently is how you're experiencing those transits.
Yeah.
What time exactly? Like if it affects the time that the ascendant changes degrees, I feel like you should incorporate it and take it in consideration.
Yeah, some people will literally travel somewhere on their solar return to get a very specific rising sign.
That's fucking
I
hilarious.
think that's really cool, actually. I've never done that, but
If I could try.
you
that
could try.
sounds
You're a
cool,
traveler,
yeah.
so but things to consider for that solar return.
No, 100%. I feel like those are the most like nice predictive tool charts, but you can use the rest of the planets as predictive charts as well if you really wanted to, like say you struggle with Mercury things. Mercury is always giving you difficulties and you've always struggled with them. First of all,
Mercury being like processing and communication and things like that.
but personally, can't relate, but
You're a very mercurial person.
exactly. But you might want to look at a Mercury return chart for yourself. It'll probably be very similar to your solar return chart because Mercury can't ever really be too far away from your sun. And if you have it really close in your natal chart, like say you have a combust Mercury anyway, so it's already only like 2 or 3 degrees away from your sun in your natal chart. Yeah, your solar return chart and your Mercury return chart are probably going to be almost the exact same chart. Mm-hmm. Maybe a different ascendant sign depending, but
yeah.
Mercury, because of that, the returns for Mercury are mostly just about like regulating your thought articulation, really, and to be able to fluidly and efficiently say what you want to say and how you mean to say it and in the ways in which you want to communicate them.
But also it's perception, right? So it would be a good time to really rethink something or like get new information that allows you to look at things differently moving forward.
I always see September as just a time for me to like go into myself, but also I like read a lot during that time. I'm like,
because
but it's a new book that I'm picking up.
Why specifically? Because September is like a Virgo season.
Yeah.
Okay. And you have a Virgo sun and a Virgo Mercury.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's why.
But when I don't know, when I'm in that time of year, things like that, it's just like I want to learn that new information. I want to intake new processing. I want to like discover something new. I don't want to reread something or go over something. I mean, sometimes I can, sure, but I usually use those time frames for like Mercury retrogrades. Like I just recently reread, speaking of Demetria George, her book Astrology and the Authentic Self, the one with the little Capitol building on the front of it. That was a great reread, and I'm really glad that I did pick it up again because I feel like every couple of years just really like not only going over the basics, but like going over the basics in a way that like puts it in perspective of my own chart and like really just like re-looking at my own chart almost as if it's like the first time again. I mean, it'll never be the first time because I know it like the back of my fucking hand. Well,
that's not even true.
But because I don't know the back of my hand. Hear me out.
Valid. Okay.
I got a scar on it the other day and my boss was like, how'd you get that? And I was like, I don't fucking know.
That's so funny.
There's like a huge bruise on it at one point and I was like, I don't even know what I fucking slammed my hand into. Like,
yeah.
The fuck?
Well,
you asked me to redraw the tattoo that's on the back of my hand? Probably couldn't. I mean, it's a Triforce with like I could probably guess, but like not exactly.
Yeah. Well, I like Mercury Returns. This year was like the first year that I really paid attention to it because remember, Mercury's so close to the sun. It's going to be in a similar pattern to the sun. So it'll happen. Your Mercury return will happen around the same time of year every year. So mine is an Aquarius, so it's going to be happening around Aquarius season. And I noticed this year on my Mercury return specifically, my Mercury is also in my 11th house. So I was talking to a bunch of people. Like people were reaching out to me, a lot of social media stuff, and like I don't think that happens every Mercury return, but it was definitely emphasized for this year. And so that to me is signifying to just like realizing those patterns and noticing that this year has already been way more social than usual with that energy.
Do you think you're going to look at your Mercury return chart now?
I mean, I already have, but it's not something that I study like every year, you mean?
No,
or,
like, yeah,
I
going
did it
forward.
this year, but
just for
I mean,
fun.
I always check my returns, but I don't like, for me, sometimes I just have to experience it to really know what it means,
well,
you
that's
know,
with,
because
like,
I
all
get
of
more
astrology.
I get like a lot more clear messages for other people's charts. When it's my own chart, I get a lot of chart blindness. So I'm like, okay,
same.
cool. I'm just noticing this and like, cool.
100%.
And also my soul, I looked at my solar return too chart within that, and I have an Aries rising actually with my solar return chart, so that kind of makes sense that my Mercury is also kind of in that 11th house anyway with my solar return. So anyway, but that's
what's
mixing
so funny is I feel like the charts that are the most similar to mine are the most difficult to read.
Yeah,
They
you get
are.
chart blindness for sure. Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, but like.
But also sometimes
But I
you
can,
get
like,
extra
live-
insights too, though, because you actually understand it more in a certain way too. It's like a fine line.
Yeah, one of the biggest things actually when I first started reading charts, everybody would ask me about like the 8th house, like so
Because Rose is a heavy 8th house.
without even knowing if I was an 8th houser or not. I got a lot of what does the 8th house mean kind of questions. And I always found it very hard to articulate, but very easy to understand.
Yeah.
I think that that's 100%. That's my life. Everything is easy to understand, but hard to like re-articulate.
Yeah. Well, and that I think is also your retrograde Mercury.
Gang. Caught it by like 3 hours.
Yeah. The next planet, which is their Venus, one of my favorite planets, Venus returns. I would love to start with this because I'm a Venusian person too. I love Venus. So like we were saying earlier, it happens every like 224 days-ish, roughly. Venus returns are a great day to, again, like depending on the sign and the house that your Venus return is taking place in, to really like set goals and intentions for the year ahead that you want. Obviously, it's going to be making certain aspects within that Venus return chart, but you can also intentionally, like with all of these other planetary returns, also use that day itself to, plant seeds within what you want for that year ahead, or that cycle, I should say, ahead. So for Venus return, if you want more, to save more money, save money that day. If you want to have more like social, like harmonious social relations, like make sure you initiate that on your Venus return. This is a great day to set, like maybe even take a day off work and just be like, I'm going to do a self-care day because that's my Venus day,
Yeah.
So
no, 100%. I like to impulse buy things with Venus and Libra, so it's definitely a day where I will like save up money beforehand and like without even cognitively like realizing that I am trying to do that, but like so I can go on a little splurge, a little spree, if you will, or if I have excess income at that time, it's 100% just going to stupid little shit. Shiny shit, pretty rock.
I like to set goals because it's in Capricorn.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, how long term can we go?
It's sometimes in a very too long term way.
Sometimes.
It's the conjunction with your Neptune there.
Well, and I wonder if a lot of that stuff will mature during your Saturn return too.
We'll see.
Yeah, I think it will.
I'm so excited.
For your Saturn return?
Yeah. My
I
dad.
love how we're talking about all these other planets. We're like, wait, but Saturn.
Saturn.
We love Daddy. I mean,
Okay, back to
Daddy.
Venus. Venus returns. I think that's it. We should just move on to Mars, actually. Unless you want to say any parting words with your planet.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we can move on to Mars.
Mars is pretty much that opposite. So Mars will definitely give you like a lot of energy as a Martian individual living on their Mars line, living a Mars career and a Mars life. Mars will give you a lot of energy to do shit, and if you don't give it an outlet, it will create an outlet. Mars is a malefic for a majority of people, because most people are born as day charts because doctors like to schedule their C-sections to be during working hours, which is understandable. But anyway, Mars and its influence on individuals, and that's not to say everybody, because you're a night chart, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah, you're a night chart.
Spooky.
So
Well, I have a great Mars return story. Because the Libra Mars, right?
And your 12th house.
In the 12th house rules me. My own worst enemy. One of the things that I don't like to do is share information with people if they're going to be upset by it. Or if I think they're going to be upset by it. Or if it's going to somehow influence their plans in a way that's going to be inconvenient, then like everything in me is telling me not to tell them. So last time Mars was at 5 degrees of Libra, I had withheld information from a friend. It wasn't anything crucial, but they also have a 5-degree Libra sun. So that day, they found out and got so upset with me, being like, why didn't you just tell me the week before? Like, I wouldn't have been upset. I could have rearranged my plans, but you didn't. And it just crushed me. And since then, so this is the thing, this is the lesson, right? Since then, every time I get this urge of like, don't tell them, like deal with it yourself, I'm like, no, that means you gotta tell them. Like, you gotta tell them. So I think it's nice.
Good for you to have learned that lesson. Well, because again,
that sun was shining on my Mars.
Yeah.
Well, this is a great like example of how Mars can be like so, I don't know, constructive but deconstructive at the same time. Constructive in its severance with certain things and certain topics, or its disillusionment, or not disillusionment, disruption is a better word. Because if you don't do anything with that Mars energy, if you internalize it and you hold it in, it's going to externally manifest.
Yep.
1,000%. It's going to either with your friend getting upset with you, or with like you projecting it onto them in some sort of way, which I'm glad is not because you're got those Capricorn placements with the Scorpio rising, you're definitely a little bit more inept to growth and learning through your failures than the average person.
Well, it's just because it's so uncomfortable. I don't want to do it again.
Yeah, no, that's valid.
Like, I'm just constantly seeking to not feel uncomfortable in, like, the ways that happen.
Yeah. Well, and it's so on the nose too. Libra being a social sign.
Yeah.
You know, and your Mars return story being very social, and how you got in your own way in that 12th house by your decision.
Secrets.
Yeah, that coming into play. So that's how you can also look at your Mars and your chart and just say, like, okay, well, what sign is it in? You know, water, even like elemental. And it's like, if it's really fiery, you're probably going to want to physically like take action, you know, with your body, for example, whereas like water, well, mine's in my 12th house too, but in a water Mars sign. So I like this year for my literally
water Mars.
Yeah,
you as well. Mine, well,
I'm the least
yours
water.
Yours is in your 12th,
okay.
or yours is in your 10th house. Mine's in the 12th house. So I actually went in a hot tub for my Mars return.
Nice.
But I'm not going to be wanting to like work out. Like that's not really my Mars. It's more of like internalized stuff. Whereas yours, 10th house, you might want to work more and put that energy into your career legacy.
My last Mars return isn't really anything like notable.
No, but it makes perfect sense because is this the tattoo one?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it makes perfect sense.
When was the last time Mars was in Scorpio, actually? I don't even remember off the top of my head. It's been a hot second. But I remember the one from like 2022 or whatever it was, like 2.5 years ago.
Because it was probably, right, it's after Libra. That was September of 2023. So October or November 2023? Probably.
Oh, that's funny. October 2023, that's when I literally started my, like, I was actually poking people.
Yeah.
I was out of the, like, you learn kind of, like, what you're doing and do all the education, and now you're actually, like, doing the task and learning by, like, putting your hands in it.
Yeah, 10th house Scorpio.
Yeah.
That is
but the one before that, funnily enough, I tried to be, like, trendy, and I tried to make, like, a trendy Venus going retrograde in Capricorn video, like, 15 seconds, like, minimal information, but it was, like, packed with information because it's me, obviously. And I still had, like, 3 text slides within this 15-second video of, like, information or possibilities of people's experiences with Venus retrograde in Capricorn. Somebody had screenshotted, like, a single part of it and, like, cropped it. So it was, like, just the one that was, like, sometimes a Venus retrograde can kind of feel like Venus is turned into Mars a little bit. Like, it's very acting abnormal to the ways that it normally does. So it's very, like, a reversal almost sometimes of the significations that you have with Venus. And what's the opposite of Venus? Mars. And I got roasted on the internet. But in doing that, Chris Brennan reached out to me and was like, yo. And, like, I think he, like, knew who I was. Because I was, like, low-key using his name to defend myself, and I was like, I've taken Chris's course, shut the fuck up, like, I know what I'm talking about, like,
yeah.
It was a one, like, you're not getting the whole of it, and it was only a 15-second video, but there was still so much more information than that little, like, screenshot of it.
Mars is also, like, a combative fighting energy, too, so it's kind of funny.
Oh, I was so pissed off.
A very public, because also it was 10th house,
it was
very
TikTok
public
brought to
fight.
Twitter. It was TikTok brought to Twitter, so my whole, like, emphasis on my journey through TikTok is to educate the masses on what actual astrology is and to not be like other TikTok astrologers, to, like, correct the other TikTok astrologers. So when that literally came up into being, it was very much like, oh my god, I'm getting roasted for being a TikTok astrologer on Twitter, but I'm fucking not. Like, I am the anti.
But also, Scorpio, like, information was
people
cut off.
it was people not seeing the bigger picture, not seeing the rest of my content, not seeing all of my, like, oh, here's how to, like, figure out if you're a day chart or a night chart, like, Hellenistic shit, like, here's me reciting Rhetorius the Egyptian for, like, 15 minutes. Not really. TikTok is 10 minutes max, but, well, now I think it's longer. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
Point is,
that's Mars.
Yeah. If you don't do the work and the energy into working with Mars, which I wasn't at the time, living on my Mars line, it's going to externally manifest itself some way or some form where that Mars is going to be activated, and you're just going to have to use it.
Yeah. I wonder if you looked back at your Mars return chart for that time too and see what aspects Mars is making as well, and see if that would tell more of that story.
I think there was a lot of Scorpio
Or-
transits at the time because Chris like asked for my birth chart because he wanted to see what the transits looked like. So he was like, "Oh, damn."
Because also now looking at that too, like, did that set up a certain kind of precedent for the next that entire Mars cycle?
Oh yeah, I stopped posting that kind of content 100%, and I just started posting education. I started doing like occult philosophy stuff. I started doing like philosophical, like down to the roots of it kind of content.
So that's how it can like set up that whole cycle until the next Mars return cycle.
And I've also just because of that like slipped away from making content. But anyway, Jupiter is our next planet, and Jupiter returns.
They
happen every 12 years. Yeah,
roughly, give or take.
and we had one in the crowd. I don't remember what sign it was in. Do you?
I don't.
Gemini.
Gemini.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously. Yeah.
Well, and it happens, usually
She's
like
24.
when you're
24,
12 years
yeah.
old, when you're 24, again, that 12-year cycle. So she was talking about how she was like in college. So in Gemini is not comfortable Jupiter's not comfortable in Gemini
yeah.
because its home is in its opposite sign, Sagittarius. So she was talking a lot about how like she's this authority, but at the same time she's working with kids and how she has to balance like that adulthood, like, oh, I have to deal with like the system of the schooling system, but also be this authority within the classroom. And I found that to be such a perfect Gemini Jupiter return story because
because
The
her
kids and everything.
her Jupiter was in early degrees of Gemini. I remember this now because I had made the comment of that's the like worst decan for. I mean, Jupiter sees space, so it's fine, but that just enhances that kind of like polarity of just too much unnecessary thought. Just complete and random unnecessary just words and thoughts and things like that. She's like, oh no, 100% I feel that. But as her actual return progressed and like Jupiter's in the late end tail of Gemini now, she's obviously like grown and been able to make more cohesive decisions. What'd she call it? Decision fatigue. Decision fatigue in that first decan is very, very strong. So she lives with that and deals with that natally. So when then it returned, it was like very, very, very heavy time in her life. She was dealing with that decision fatigue.
Well, and that was also happening in her 12th house. The 11th if you're doing Placidus, but 12th.
It was a 12th, yeah.
12th.
That's how I was thinking about it the entire time.
See it too.
Anytime anybody talks about their Placidus chart in the group, I feel so bad, but I'm not listening to them. I'm like, what's your
Thinking it in
ascendant?
your
And then
head.
I'm thinking it in whole sign houses, and then I just don't talk about the houses, but I interpret it.
Yeah. But that's perfect for 12th house being like that subconscious too, and like how things are revealing themselves from the subconscious to the conscious. And we were giving her like good insights too, because upcoming in just like a month or two, the Jupiter is going to be moving into exaltation in Cancer, which will be her first house. So
I
it
feel like
should
that'll
be
definitely help,
more
yeah.
of a wisdom, all that like Jupiterian wisdom and things like that, moving into the first house from the subconscious to the actual integration of the body and the self.
She works with like what elementary school kids
Yeah.
too?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it was younger kids. So to have that like nurturing, like gentle parenting kind of approach too, I think is definitely going to be really beneficial to her like decision fatigue, because she's finding out the decisions now to deal with it in order to move forward. And Jupiter's very much about that. It's about big growth cycles because it's 12 years. That's a pretty major change. We go from like these returns that are happening pretty frequently, like every 2.5 years at max,
less, yeah.
or less, to now 12 years.
But also, you get your Jupiter return after your 12th house perfection year.
Yeah, and I feel
So
like that's
during
like a
it.
little
Yeah, so
reward.
I feel like
It's like a little treat.
exactly. But then you're coming out of this like kind of internal like struggle like time, and you're bringing I
But
feel
your
like
Jupiter return's not always a 12th house perfection year.
No, it's
I
when
feel
you're
like
coming
it's
out of
when
it.
you're coming out of it.
Yeah,
'Cause if it's
sometimes
every
not
12
always,
years.
but yeah, it is every 12-ish years.
But it's not always going to be in your 12th house. I don't get it.
no 12th house perfection.
Perfection year.
Perfected year.
I
So when you're
know.
23,
Perfected,
it's 12th
house,
house.
and then when you're 24, it's first
First.
house. When you're
But
36,
Jupiter's not going to be there.
and it doesn't matter.
Okay, my
No,
bad.
as
I'm
in-
like,
as-
wait, what are you talking
No, it's just like a separate transit that's happening
Okay.
prior to your Jupiter return.
Oh, so there's something in
But it's
tandem with that.
what
Okay.
the point I'm trying to make is that Jupiter does bring in opportunity and kind of forms your like morals and values that you're moving forward with, and after you've gone through some dark stuff at 23,
It
you go
forms
into
that.
24, plus you're getting your Jupiter return wherever house it's going to be in. It kind of just reinforces that first house perfection year.
Yeah.
And like allows
And
you to
how
be
that-
more yourself
yeah,
and like stand up for
defines who
things
you
that
are.
you believe in.
That's cool.
Giggles and Jupiter in the first house.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you got that Jupiter in first house.
Well, I experienced the first house perfected years
literally
with
did.
my Jupiter
Yeah.
returns, like in the first. It's all just
Yeah. Well, and
big internal growth. I go through ego deaths constantly and frequently.
it's great.
My ego is non-existent at this point.
I would not say that.
Yeah,
I would definitely not
either.
say that, but that's really cute. But I also do think, like, okay, moving into the Saturn return, you have Saturnian Jupiter in your first house. You have that Aquarius rising with your Jupiter there. I do think that with your Saturn return, that's going to help evolve and solidify your Jupiter in that first house. Any of your Aquarian or your Capricorn placements are going to be matured through that. So I do think, like, as a fellow, Jupiter, like my Jupiter's in Capricorn, so a fellow Saturnian Jupiter, a lot of that luck, gets solidified through that with age and experience that Saturn
But also, you make
offers.
your own luck. I've got
Yeah,
my Jupiter in
100%,
Aquarius
yeah.
too, so it's like your hard work
Makes
makes your luck.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I feel like this really also speaks to your Saturn return experience too, with like going on what we were speaking about with the Empress, with hitting your Capricorn Venus and Neptune conjunction, but like doing that hard work with the Jupiter and Aquarius, yes, but then also like reaping the rewards of that hard work with Venus and Capricorn. But
well,
like,
yeah, Venus, Mercury, Jupiter,
100%.
and Sun. So
yeah, that is
It'll be
quite a
fun.
build
Those are all going to be topics.
activated planets. Yeah.
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 But again, you've already gone through the squares of Saturn. A Saturn return is the returning to the point, but it doesn't mean that that Saturn hasn't been aspecting your
Right.
planets throughout your life.
I mean, Saturn in Aquarius was hard.
yeah.
Well, this is your fourth and fifth houses.
Third
No.
and fourth.
Third and fourth. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I did math wrong. Well, okay.
Saturn in
Angles.
Capricorn was also kind of hard,
Yeah.
It was all of those personal placements.
Saturn and Capricorn was really difficult for me too. I enjoyed it while simultaneously it being looking back on it, there was so much fuck shit that was happening to me. But I was having a great time. I was like
depressed.
fucking.
The entire transit.
I mean, I was I'm always depressed. So that doesn't change.
well, I'm not. So.
I was less depressed then than I was at earlier points in my life. So
But that was also your 12th house.
yeah, that was. I was dealing with my Saturn square in my 12th during a 12th house perfected year too.
Yeah,
so like
Darker time.
that was all. It was sequential. It was like one after the. I like just finished the Saturn square as like I went into like a 12th house perfected year or something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Correct. No, the vice versa.
The cool thing about Saturn is, like, without challenges, you can't build resilience and you can't become stronger. It's like a muscle that you build, right? You can't get stronger without tearing that muscle. So Saturn offers you these opportunities to get stronger. Yeah, they're not pleasant. Usually they're really not. But like you were saying, Saturn honors hard work. Saturn does honor like taking responsibility and accountability, especially within the self, and finding that authority that resonates with your values, and that's where you get rewarded. It might not be like Venus who rewards you, or Jupiter that rewards you with like, literal prosperity or like food or things, but Saturn rewards you by like, if you set boundaries, people aren't going to cross them, and that makes your life better. You know what
And
I mean?
I also see it as like a really nice base. Like you're building
The foundation.
brick by brick, and if it's solid, like it's solid. Then you have so much more trust in the future. And that's where the Jupiter then comes in.
Yeah, Rose, you were telling us yesterday about how Saturn returns are about like brick by brick demolishing what was before that was not serving you, kind of, just having to analyze it. And then by the time your Saturn returns over, you have this, steady foundation to then build upon moving forward.
Sorry, I turned the grain down because of the wind, so
yeah.
I'm gonna move the podcast mic closer to us.
Cool.
It wasn't like that bad in the background, but then it picked up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, let's get through, these next few. We're getting close to an hour here.
Yeah, so Uranus returns are essentially, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto returns can happen very early in your childhood, depending on if you like have those retrogrades happening like right beforehand. So that's probably the only time in your life that you will experience them. Uranus you will get at 84.01 years. So sometimes it's a time in life where you just don't have to worry about the mundane stresses, whatever those mundane stresses that you've been dealing with for the last 84 years. It's just kind of a release. It's a very freedom kind of resolution or comeback to.
I would say Uranus is the planet of just erratic change. So like I wouldn't say it can be liberating, but I wouldn't say that would happen for every 84-year-old experiencing this. I would just say there's going to be a big change within the mundane things, how things have always been.
Think of how mentally taxing, sure, but think of how mentally like liberating it might feel to just give in to being insane though.
You know, I was reading about Uranus like the other day.
Should just like be like dementia or something like that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, absolutely. But you know how people describe Uranus as like a lightning strike?
Yes.
Yeah. I was reading how it's more of an earthquake.
Oh.
How there was like stuff building up. Like it's never out of the blue. Like it feels like out of the blue, but if
lightning doesn't happen out of the blue all the time.
I know, but it's more of like this like big shift from under. I know it's
I
the
think
sky
it,
thing.
I
like
think
the
it would
lightning.
depend. I think it would depend on the sign that Uranus is also in. Because if it's Earth, then probably that earthquake thing would make sense. But if it's like maybe a fire or a air, maybe that would be more lightning.
I think we'll see when Uranus moves into Gemini. Because it's been in Taurus for so long.
That's gonna feel like lightning.
That's gonna feel
like lightning for sure.
Well, hear me out. I like the lightning analogy because lightning fixes nitrogen into our soil. That is a huge part of our nitrogen cycle, and it is so important for our environment and for our like system of fucking living. So it's very important in its chaos and its destructionness.
Yeah.
But yeah,
sure.
Moving
Neptune
forward, yeah. Well, you don't experience a Neptune return in your life unless it's as a little kid, so it might just some false memories, some disillusionment, maybe like being like lied to in your early adolescence of like this person's your uncle, and then like later in life you find out that they have no relation to you whatsoever, you know, kind of jazz.
Yeah, something. Yeah, any Neptunian thing. Maybe you're
Maybe
also
weird
maybe you're a
dreams.
baby in a film. Like
Yeah.
that literally.
And you just don't know it. You're just like some famous
Well,
baby.
you could know it.
Well, you could yeah.
because Neptune just rules film. Neptune doesn't always hide. It can be disillusionment, but again, it could just be maybe you were a baby in a film and don't remember how like it was actually terrible or it was actually really fun and that was a very formidable time. But yeah, there's a lot of ways that can present itself.
Yeah, and then you want to speak on Pluto as well?
Same kind of thing, but like, you know, that really doesn't happen within a lifetime unless it's a retrograde period. So Pluto, the planet of transformation, like, was that the kidnapping?
No, I used
example?
Uranus with that.
It could also be Pluto.
Well, it could be a Pluto thing too. Anything that's like traumatic like that. I feel like any of the outer planet. Well, not to say that. Well, I feel like getting kidnapped is kind of a traumatic situation. Regardless of how you look at it.
Well,
but
and Pluto too is the planet of death. So maybe you have like someone really like important in your life, like a parent die like as an infant, and that could be your Pluto return story.
And some sort of power, like someone doing something from like an authority figure.
Yeah, maybe it's a time where like you don't know it, but like your grandparents cut your parents off, so your parents had to like really struggled to like support themselves and you as like a newborn, like being so young kind of jazz.
But also like external things like war.
Yeah, this is a generational planet, so it's a bigger picture stuff for sure.
No, it could 100%, and without even realizing it, like that specific war impacting really like how you grow up and how your childhood is developed without even realizing it.
It'll be the whole generation that was born during that time.
And then, I don't know if you want to go into phase returns or not. We kind of touched about it, but I feel like we had a really great discussion about
if you want to touch on, like
returns.
Just touch on that. We probably won't have time for Betty White today, but
I feel like it didn't take that long for the more intermediate or advanced people to catch on to what I was talking about, really. I don't know.
It's simple.
Okay. It's pretty simple. So I'll just go over it for those who are curious about it. So just like we were talking about first quarter and third quarter moons, and we kind of touched on it. I think we used one analogy where I talked about the opposite square to that, where it was like superior versus inferior. But the phase relationship between any two planets can also be looked at in this kind of synodic, repetitory cycle. Obviously, planets like looking at when the Sun and Mercury are the same distance away from each other as they were at your time, date, and location of birth is going to be a lot more frequent than if you were looking at like a Pluto-Saturn square. The example that I used was like Betty White. She had experienced her last Saturn. She has a Saturn Pluto square in her natal chart. I think they're like a degree or so away from a perfect square. But the like last time that happened before she passed away was 1993. You know, like that's insane to think about, like the time that it would take for that transit to occur again. There was another one in 2010, but it was the opposite square.
I think I have a good example actually once you're done.
Yeah. I don't want to like linger too much on like the technical aspects. But if you have questions on inferior or superior aspects and the difference between them, please email us at mercuryastropod@gmail.com or hit me up directly at astrorosalie@gmail.com or via my website's Connect to Me link. That just gets sent to my email.
We'll have all these linked in the show notes.
Yes,
too.
100%.
Yeah. Did you want to just share really quick?
Yeah, I think because you were talking about squares, right? But I was looking at
You can do conjunctions, yeah.
Because they're just simpler.
Yeah.
That you don't have to like check. So I have that Venus-Neptune conjunction in my chart. So I looked at the past 3 times that happened. And so that's kind of, right, we're talking money values and also goals for the future because it's Capricorn, and also spiritual things because it's Neptune. And so 3 times ago, again, not counting this year, so I guess 4 times ago, I had been shorted a big raise at work the day that Neptune and Venus conjoined, and I got like a fraction of the raise, and I found the screenshot of me texting my friend being like, can you believe it? And I felt really like not valued at my job. I was working corporate, whatever. Next time that this conjunction happened, I was back home and I found a picture. I was doing like a detachment spell, me and my job, trying not to let whatever was happening there affect me. And I did a tarot spread about what I should do next. And in the like problem at hand, it was the 4 of Pentacles, so it was giving capitalism. And then it was like, what should I do next? And it was the Wheel of Fortune, and it was the Fool. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess this capitalism thing isn't working for me anymore. I don't know what to do next. Next time the Venus-Neptune thing happened again, the conjunction happened again, was the day was my last day at my corporate job. And I haven't worked corporate since.
Yes.
And like those 3 conjunctions, I was looking at it at midnight last night being like, I can't go to sleep now that I see this. It's so crazy. But tracking that was really, really cool.
That is really cool. And it's cool that like Neptune's influence too, about like you not really seeing it clearly until later on is really cool.
That's why I'm so excited for you to like live more Venusianly on your Neptune line, and to see how that goes.
See how that goes.
Definitely don't give in to the cult.
No, I won't.
Don't join a cult. Don't become a cult.
Well,
absolutely
and so
not.
just to wrap
and you'll
up,
drag me out.
Oh, I will. By your fucking feet. I'll be like, no, Lada, you can't go.
Yeah. So just to wrap up the phase return thing, if you want to look more into that, like on your birth chart, like what relationships are you wanting to look at? So like for you, for example, Lada was just telling us about like Venus things. So that would be money, values, things like that. But if you are someone who wants to look at your relationship between, your energy levels, so Mars, and, if that's making an aspect to anything in particular, that's when you would look at a phase return. And if you want to get more specific with that. So
looking at solar phase returns are really important for the inner planets, I believe. Mars, Venus, and Mercury. Those are very common predictive tools by a lot of astrologers to like look at phase. Yeah, well, the moon obviously too. But that's what I was just about to go into. Looking at the moon is probably going to be the easiest way in order for you to do that. I find that the moon's phase returns are the easiest because that's just a relationship between the moon and the sun.
But also progressed moon return.
Yeah, okay. Well,
we can get so deep into it.
That,
astrology is so just
so
deep.
Yeah, you can do, it's not just between the moon and the sun that you can have that first quarter like waxing versus waning kind of idea. That's how you can think of superior and inferior conjunctions actually. Is it waxing or is it waning? That's important. That's a different thing. Is it gaining in light or decreasing in light? Is it moving further away from that planet or getting closer towards that like aspect and that relationship? So
for sure. Well, thank you all so much for joining us and listening. Thank you for our special guest, Lotta, for joining us today. We do meet every month. We have an official new date that is regular at the Pearl. So we meet every third Sunday from 3 to 5 p.m. here in Denver, Colorado. So if you want to join us, please do. We would love to see you there. We have a meetup link. We'll link that all in the show notes. But if you would also like to connect with us, obviously we have an Instagram at mercastropod, and like Rose was saying earlier, our email mercastropod@gmail.com, and obviously our YouTube at mercastropod.com. And if you would also like to book a personal reading, something more intuitive, that's my cup of tea, and that would be on my Instagram.
Intuitive, but on like a baseline understanding of how astrology works.
Oh yeah,
for
sure.
It's more than baseline, I feel
well,
like.
no, like the very in-depth, complex understanding. Well, the mechanisms of how astrology works, kind of like baseline. That's what I mean.
The way that it works basically is like you tell me what you need to hear. Well, not what you need to hear, but what you kind of want insights on, or if you just want spiritual messages like from your higher self, and I will know where to go from there. It's a very intuitive process. So if you would like to book a reading with me, you can reach me again in the show notes, but also on Instagram at Bren Biggs or on Linktree/Bren Biggs. And if you want something more technical and very in depth,
AstroRosalie.com.
Yeah.
AstroRosalie.
And do you want to get connected with anyone?
Nope, that's fine.
No, you're like no.
You're okay.
Yeah.
Great, cool. Well, thank you all, and we'll see you next month.
Bye.